Welcome, welcome. We're really excited to have our discussion with you guys and share some of our experiences with you. If you don't know and you haven't read the pamphlet, we are addressing culture and how each of these folks has created culture in their own company and how it affects the way that they now tell stories in the current landscape of things. So I think if we're all ready to get started, I'll start with introductions. I'm gonna introduce everybody. We're gonna show a clip of some of the work that they do, and then we're going to talk about their culture of their companies, how that culture was created, and then kind of get into a little bit of how that kind of affects the work that they do. So first we have Heather Wright from Ardman. And Heather is executive producer in charge of partner content at Ardman. And if you don't know Ardman, they're an amazing, they do a lot of different things, but they're an amazing character animation and a lot of mixed media stuff together, live action, just about everything nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Terrific.
Pretty much.
Anything else you want to add to that before we watch?
I think we just look at the work. It's the simplest
cool.
way.
I love it. That's Ardman. I realized I forgot to introduce myself, but we will go through you guys, and then I'll tag myself on at the end. Next is Mari Loeb. He's co-founder and editor for PS 260 Bi-Coastal Editorial House. Does amazing work. Has won Cannes Lions and Cannes Golds and various other accolades, from what I understand. Really great work. So I think we're going to show something for him. Mari, anything else you want to add before we show the work?
No. You can
awesome.
Roll the montage.
Awesome. And on the end, we have Angus Neal. He's Chief Creative Officer at The Mill. In 2016, he was recognized by Adweek as one of their Creative 100. I don't know if you remember that, but oh yeah. But that's an honor of being in the industry. It's one of the industry's most creative, innovative, and creative content creators. So go ahead, let's roll something from the mill. I mean, let's do it. Awesome. And I'm the moderator. I'm Santino Slatovic. I'm from Los York, a bi-coastal creative production company. Dabbles in design and a lot of live action as well. Well, cool. I think, I just want to get into it. I think that we have 3 awesome, unique companies. And, obviously it takes a lot to kind of build a company and a company culture that defines your voice. And so, let's just start. Like what makes the current makeup of your company so unique and different than, your competitors, I guess. Who wants to take this one? Heather, why don't you start?
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
So I think we are quite unique as a company, not only because we have a very strong tradition in stop motion animation, which is where we started. Over the last kind of 10 and 20 years, we've really diversified. You'll know us for our feature films. You'll know us for Chicken Run or Wallace and Gromit or Shaun the Sheep. We also make a ton of TV series and less often now with traditional terrestrial broadcasters, very often with the Fangs, and new stuff going on with them right now. And we also do a lot of commercials and I'm making a funny face because I feel like I'm selling the company, which is really not what I wanted to do. I really wanted to talk about the culture, but the culture is very much comes from the values of the owners of the company. So we are about excellence. We are always about creativity, and everything we do tries to speak to those values. We know we're good at comedy, and we also do other things, and we know we're good at animation. So we stick with what we know at, and obviously we do diversify out, and we're doing increasingly more and more kind of games and interactive, a lot of VR, and going into different sectors as well. But our culture is very much one of how can we make a difference in the world? And it really does come from who we are as people and what we're trying to do to make this world a better place. And then the rest of it just comes with it. That's kind of our culture.
Cool. I mean, for us, our culture, it's actually something that we actively think about all the time, and something that we actually take a lot of pride in. And we even have like a mantra for ourselves, which is like beyond the boards. And it's something we actually, we really try to live that, because there's a lot of other places that do what we do, but there's not a lot of other places that do it the way we do it. And what we actually try to bring to it, and how we try to go beyond, whatever, beyond the boards that we're given, and like the way you're greeted at reception, and the way you are handed your lunch, and the way you are called your Uber. We're actively thinking about how we can go beyond and define our own culture. And I'll also say that for us, I think at PS260, in particular, our culture has been defined just as much from the bottom up as the top down. Like, I think the way we are, why we are the way we are now, I think has a lot to do with who we employed in those early days and the people that were there, and they really helped define and continue to help define our culture.
Yeah, I know that when you're looking for, it's hard to find great people, right? But when you can, it's almost like you find a great person and then you find the position for them rather than have a position and try to fill it.
No, and we've literally done that before. We've had people that we've loved that we've actually had to create positions for, like jobs for, just because, for us it was really it's about the talent. It's about who that person is, and if there's not like a neat little box they fit in right away, like we will just create a box for you, like cool. That's something that we actually take very seriously. Yeah.
How about you, Angus?
I think it's interesting kind of hearing everyone's responses. I think collaboration probably has been a kind of cornerstone of the mill. We're always wanting to collaborate with the best creatives, the best talents in the business, and I think that's something that really helps us keep fresh as well, is that we try and see what's new, what's up and coming, who are the young talent, what's the fresh talent. I think we invest a lot in the young people of the mill. I think we have huge training programs and mentorship programs where we help people find their skill and try and help them be as good as they possibly can be. I think another thing that we really believe is close to our culture is innovation. I know it sounds corny, but it's really important to not do something the way you've always done it, because then you get stuck in your ways. So innovating and constantly challenging yourselves in terms of, is there a better way? Is there a new platform? Are there new tools that we can use? I think really is part of the culture. So people are constantly figuring out, like, is there a better way to do this? Is some other way that I can achieve what I'm trying to do here? So those are probably the two main ones. It's been tricky though, because to keep our culture, because we've gone from just in the US alone, I arrived in New York 16 years ago. There were 5 of us, and that was a really tight-knit, easy group of people to manage, because you're young, you're excited, you're not scared of anything, and you're like, let's just do this. Then before you know it, now we're up to nearly 300 people in the office, and to maintain that culture and let it permeate throughout the whole company it's tough. It doesn't come easily.
Yeah, I can imagine that being really difficult, actually. Definitely, that's incredible. And then so Heather, I know you guys have also been around for a long time. Like, does it feel the same? Like, does it still feel the same in the office? Like, I mean...
I think that it kind of does feel the same. It still feels quite anarchic, quite freeing. I mean, I think we've all got a lot of autonomy in our roles, and we've all got the freedom to try different things and to feel like you can try something and you can fail. And that, I heard a quote yesterday about, stepping back is the first step in stepping forward to something different. So, we do try lots of different things and they don't all work. And we do have that kind of family culture. We're quite small. People think we're huge. We're only about 130 on staff. And, a bit like the construction industry, we scale up when we need to for a big show. But
did you say 130 on staff?
Yeah.
We're 35.
Yeah. But we do lots of different things. So, but I think there's a huge emphasis on, for example, what the staff want to do, what motivates our talent, what motivates us, what makes us get out of bed in the morning. We like doing things with purpose. We like do an awful lot of films for not-for-profits, a lot of work with charities. Our people endlessly seem to run marathons and things for charity, and we match fund all of that. So I think that in terms of feeling the culture, it's about feeding off the fire of people's enthusiasm themselves for their work, and making sure there's enough diversity of work and people are stretched, they're not doing the same thing over and over, challenged as much as they want to be in order to keep them motivated and keep coming to work every day. So it feels the same. Yeah, still a lot of beer on a Friday night, we're still Brits.
There you go. That'll keep a company together right there alone. Maury, I know that what in your choice to kind of actually found and own a company rather than just be an editor on a roster. What was your kind of decision making there? Obviously, it's a lot more. You can't just be, you can't just think editor all the time. You have to put on your company hat and make those kind of decisions too.
Right. I mean, at the time it happened, I think I was just so young and stupid that it just kind of, it was fortuitous and it just kind of happened. But, I also think at the time, it was drilled into me really early on that no matter what you were doing, that you really have to manage your own career. Like, no matter if you're reception or a runner or anything, like you have to manage your own career. And for me, it was always, if I was working for someone else, then I would just be working for someone else. And I knew that I had to really do that. I had to take it upon myself to actually do that. And also at the time when I was like a young editor, I mean, I was doing so many jobs for free, just to get in with people and to do jobs, and those were the most creative things. And I think I would have been a miserable employee for someone because I really, at the time, you have to do so many free things in order to do the good work. So that was part of it, and really just because I knew I just wanted to define the place that I worked. Like I had to define that myself,
Right. Part of the voice. I think obviously we all work for our big clients or ad agencies and brands and stuff like that. Like how do you, Angus, we'll start with you. How do you distinguish yourself? What do you think is culturally different between working like at the Mill versus working at a large ad agency or for a brand?
I think one of the things that we're somehow able to do is to hold on to people for long periods of time. I think at the Mill, it's not uncommon to have people that have been there for a decade. And I think when you're able to give people career paths where they don't have to stay in a specific role, or they can evolve, or they can grow, I think they grow with the company. They help perpetuate the culture, and that in itself makes the culture stronger. So I think just the fact that we don't scale up and scale down is something that really, I think, keeps us healthy. I think we're able to it's been a slow growth over the last, I've been in the company for 20 years, so ever since I've joined, it's been a slow growth, and it's always been kind of considered, and we don't double in size in a year. We kind of, slowly. It
can be a bit risky though, right? Like trying to keep, everyone, especially in this in the changing landscape of work ebb and flow seems to be changing all the time.
It is. It's risky, and back in the days we did some feature work in London many years ago on Gladiator and Black Hawk Down and those types of big films. And what we tried to do is we try to hold on to all of our staff between films, and we realized that was really hard. It's really hard to hold on to 100 compositors and CG animators when you've got 2 weeks of downtime. You're like, oh, we're paying everybody's salary. So that was tricky. So we've been learning along the way in terms of also just the type of work that we do now. We've diversified a lot, so we're not relying on these big chunky projects. We kind of do lots of different smaller projects that kind of have helped us diversify, and that's protected us a bit and allowed us to grow.
What about you, Heather?
So I think that one of the things that we've done, talking about diversifying, you're right about that scaling up and scaling down thing. It is tricky to manage, but we have found that actually as an industry, an animation industry, we come together. So if we have a movie ending, we'll be phoning Leica or Framestore or MPC and saying, we have a movie coming to an end.
Or the Mill.
Yeah, or the Mill. Do you want some people? Or they'll phone us and say, we need some people. Have you got anything happening? Or our movie's finishing. Have you got some people? So there is a kind of almost peripatetic workforce that just moves from movie to movie to movie, and that goes over to Leica in Portland as well, and to Wes Anderson's projects too. So it's good because we always know what's going on in the industry. But on that subject of working with agencies and working with brands, the advertising industry has been so volatile for us as production companies for the last 5 years or so. We've really tried to think differently about the way we do our business and looking for places where, rather than being, sometimes animation is used best where there's a real purpose in why something's animated, and it's worst used when it's an add-on technique or it's a look or it's a feel. So we've been looking for places where could animation actually be the product? Where can animation actually be used to entertain people? Or where can it add value to a product rather than being just a technique? So we've been looking a lot more involved in VR, a lot more of interactive AR projects, and in fact, not always comedy either. And I've got one short clip I can show you, which is a project we made last year for the BBC, which was about they ran a public competition. We're interested in the idea of how would immersive news work. So we really like entering those public competitions because it gives us the opportunity to try something different that nobody would hire us to do or that we would necessarily think of. So we made this project about the Syrian migrant crisis. And there's a little clip which will give you a feel of the thing, which if you can play now, please, Cara.
He is tired. We are all tired.
They were supposed to be here an hour ago.
Maybe they don't come.
Stop! Stop your engine! Stop your engine!
And so this one, you would think, well, why would Aardman or why would you ever get involved in something like this? I mean, we've always been storytellers, just to talk about the storytelling a little part of it a bit. And I feel slightly irritated that everybody seems to think they're a storyteller now, and it seems to be a collective noun for everything that kind of belongs, all these ideas that belong together, therefore it must be a story. But we really do talk about characters, beginnings, middles, and ends. And then you think, well, why animation? And we realised that one of the things that VR could do is because it could track body movements. We could create the illusion of eye contact between characters, which you couldn't do in live action as easily, but you could do in VR with all the sheer amount of data that's required to make the VR work. It isn't actually that sophisticated in its look yet, although it is getting much more sophisticated now. And we knew that if somebody turned and looked at you, a character could look at you and talk to you. And so we made the decision to put you as the protagonist actually in the story. We haven't yet got to the point where you can talk to the person, have a conversation, but you could look at the person and then they would talk to you. And if you looked down, you would have legs, and if you turned, you'd feel the weight of the boat move a little bit. And there's a part in that story where one character comes and sits right next to you, and everybody kind of goes like this, and just because their body space is being invaded. So in terms of learning how to tell stories differently over the years, that's something where we do constantly have to innovate. And then with the I mean, I don't want to talk too long about VR, but with the VR stuff, it's very much like directing for theatre. You lose all that control. We're used to having an edit. We're used to controlling the pace of the action. We're used to controlling where the audience can look at when and what point we want to make. But you can no longer do that with VR. The action's going on, and you don't actually know where the audience is going to look. So you need to think of ways in the story of attracting the audience's attention. And then if they do look away, the action hangs so that when they look back, they don't miss a critical part of the story. So so that's just one example of how we've had to change as a company and do different types of things, and we're doing that all round. Is that enough?
Yeah, that's awesome. That piece is incredible. And obviously it's relevant to what's going on today, and it kind of ties back to how you guys are, not just thinking about
I think that
selling things for clients.
People wouldn't look at that and think that Aardman have done that.
Right.
And like all of our work, it can't look like our own work that we do for brands or for anybody. So it's about diversifying. Where can we work? So, and our other areas would be things like 4D cinema, right? 4D cinema films, or doing a lot of work in the healthcare industry, where our values of purpose and wanting to help and connect with audiences are a real value.
Awesome. a lot of talk about diversifying and stuff like that. But so, I want to kind of, obviously, I want to kind of talk about talent and how you diversify your talent. It's obviously a huge factor for all of us here. And, Mari, like, how do you manage to, recruit and grow talent and, in your space? I mean, I think, how do you stay relevant to where people actually are like, well, you want artists and talented editors and stuff. You want them to work for you. You want them to feel, how do you deal with that problem out there right now?
And it's actually something that you were talking about also. At PS260, the vast majority of all of our staff are homegrown. Like, we do make outside hires when we need to, but really most of us have been there starting at the very lowest position. We were runners and receptionists, and we've had people, who have been there for, well over a decade. And I think, we were just talking outside, it was funny, but I think 3 of us have all just celebrated our 20-year anniversaries with our company, which I think
That's
says
amazing.
a lot.
That is literally amazing in this business.
Which, in this industry,
It's kind of weird.
I think
It
it's
is.
very weird. Like, we're going to get our gold watches at one point.
I, of course,
And,
started when I was 12.
Right. But for talent, for us, it's such a long-term process. We're not hiring someone because they're really good at something. Like, we want a creative person and a talented person. And I have this, I have a fundamental belief that a creative person is creative and can learn to do, can learn to do different things with different toolkits. So for us, in a way, we've kind of taken a conservatory approach to, staff and talent, where we break you down and build you up the way we want, in a gentle way. But for us, it's all of our energies are actually focused around the person and not the position and not the job, because that changes. And we're very serious about mentoring and teaching and being taught.
Is there anything specific, like, do you assign assistant editors to editors as far as, because you think they can learn from a certain or anything? I'm just curious.
No, we actually do. Like, we try to place people on certain jobs, how it would benefit both, the assistant and the editor, and who would be best for a job. And it's actually, we don't have dedicated assistants. Everyone kind of moves around, but we are thinking about that. Yeah.
And Angus, I know that you've talked a lot about talent already, but I mean, you guys actually have training programs and things like that. Like, do you guys go and recruit from schools, or what is there like a fundamental thing that you guys you do, an underlying?
Yeah, I think like what Maury said, we really believe in kind of growing people from a young age and actually really kind of shaping them and helping grow the company. Because if you invest in people that are hungry and eager and talented, then you can do so much with those energies. And if you want to kind of steer that towards CGI animation, if you want to steer that towards production, there's lots of different ways to harness that energy. And I think that one thing we've also learned is that you mustn't just keep on hiring the same thing or the same attributes, the same type of person. You need diversity in opinion, you need diversity in culture, and you need diversity in skill set as well. So something that we've realized is that, cross-pollinating, where you get a coder and then sitting with an artist, put them in the room together, and then let them run, create something, you get amazing results when you start getting different disciplines and mixing them together. And I think that's something we've over the years learned, is that by cross-pollinating, you kind of then create really interesting work that in turn gets noticed by the schools, that in turn gets lots of interns wanting to come to see the company, and that it perpetuates the cycle. So we really believe in kind of training, mentoring, getting somebody who's a senior lead, and then getting them to lead a team of people who learn from that person and hand it down generations.
Cool. Amazing. I realize this thing's moving pretty fast, so I kind of want to get into a little bit more of basically how the cultures of the company have affected how you guys tell stories a little bit. which is obviously we've all had challenges, and we have to tell stories in a much shorter amount of time now, and in VR and AR, and even if it's an experiential project, it still needs, you still need a story, a narrative, or else it's just, some stuff flashing on a screen, right? So, like a lot is, how do I phrase this into a question? I mean, maybe you can just, Heather, you can kind of talk about, a little bit. I mean, you did a little bit already, but maybe just a little bit more about,
Sure, yeah. So I think that, the biggest thing that we've noticed is that despite the fact that, with the whole cultural milieu changing, the whole kind of evolution of social media, the way everybody's watching video all the time now, our role has changed. Even though people want to communicate a message in a shorter and shorter amount of time, they also need to have touch points in lots of different places at the same time. So in fact, our storytelling has actually become longer, but the money that people want to spend is the same. So, very often we're creating a hero piece of content, which might end up being like part of a Facebook Live event. We did a big campaign with Wieden Kennedy London and PayPal. I'm hesitating slightly because I don't think it was Wieden, so I think it might have been CPB, so I really do apologise for PayPal just before Christmas. And it started off with PayPal wanted people to use the platform to donate money to charities at Christmas. So they were a bit nervous about that because obviously being a bank and saying we're going to donate money to charity just looks very kind of gratuitous and very kind of opportunistic. So we started off talking about how you could have turkeys for Christmas, and turkeys being in a physical race. And then charities started to attach themselves, saying, we'd like a turkey, can we have a turkey, can we have a turkey? And the charities were all benefiting because they were going to get the profile that they wouldn't have been able to afford on their own. So we started off with one race, and then grew into like a Facebook Live event. And then each turkey had its own kind of backstory. So it ends up as like 10 mini stories. And then they all wanted like tons of GIFs and stills and other social content. And then suddenly it was like community management of content. And it just kind of kept growing. So even though it was like loads of tiny pieces, the multiples of pieces and managing them all, and thinking about, getting each of the characters to be distinctive and authentic and something that people could recognise with. I mean, one of the things we've really learned about how characters connect is that if they speak to a universal truth, so we all know it's to love or to hate or to be frustrated or jealous or angry, but the situation they're in comes from your own experience, so it's an authentic experience of where it's placed. So what might be to me sitting on a Saturday afternoon in the English countryside, somebody who lives in LA or somewhere else is going to have a very different experience of what a Saturday afternoon is. But we all know what it is to be too hot or too cold. So I think if you speak to those universal truths but come from a cultural authenticity, then you're going to have stories that can connect all round. So we take that learning, and that's learning that comes from our feature films across all of our stories, and that type of thing is exactly what applied to this PayPal campaign. How can we now make a turkey that works for the Save the Children, for the Sue Ryder Cancer Charity, and for LGBT Trust? So I think that kind of more authentic connection and real characters and real stories is how we connect nowadays.
Awesome. Maury, specifically to you, the 30-second TVC used to be the hero cut for just about everything, and nowadays it's, sometimes there's no duration, sometimes it's 6 seconds, and sometimes it's 12 seconds, and so how does that affect? How has that affected your business? How has that affected how you guys think about a story when you get a brief or when you talk to a director?
Yeah, that's been like, one of the major changes that that has happened during my career, where it's interesting. I think less than like half of the commercials now on TV are 30 seconds. Like it really has changed, and yes, so now we're tasked with doing we're still doing 30-second spots and 60-second spots, but then also a whole host of other components with it, for social and stuff, and it really has changed the way that we've worked. We've spent years like honing our craft and learning how to tell these stories and telling these like mini films, and then all of a sudden you're given 6 seconds to do something.
Does that frustrate an editor, or is it?
You know what? Yes and no. I mean, yes, it frustrates just because sometimes you know, when you're setting out to make a 6-second piece of content, like, that could be really great. Like, we do lots of really good 6s and 10s and 15s. And then also sometimes we just have like, you know, they're just like, you know, go through the dailies, and if you see anything that might make, you know, be good on social, like, you know, do that. Which is great because we do it, but sometimes, you know, it's always better when something is actually like, you know, when there's thought behind it.
Well, so that in that case, you are actually like, they're basically asking you to kind of craft the story.
Which
in that
we have
case.
to do more, like, you
Yeah.
know, more and more often, which is actually, you know, does become really fun, like, you know, and that can be good. But sometimes, yes, I personally think we use this word storyteller. I think we use it too flippantly and throw it around. And our 6-second things, stories, like, sometimes. And sometimes they're just like a one-liner. Sometimes they're just, and it could be good, and you can have like a cool little sticky, memorable image and stuff, but is it storytelling? But at the same time, I will also say, but that's also okay, because, you know, for us, what we do, you know, I'm an editor, so, you know, we're artists, but we're also craftspeople. And in the end, like, we're still, you know, we're applying our craft, and we're being tapped creatively, and, you know, it's still fulfilling.
Right.
So.
On that note, Angus, you guys, the mill obviously is much more than a visual effects and a finishing house. You guys are crafting stories, and do you find yourself partnering with? Are you hiring writers? Are you, you know, things of that? Are you partnering your visual artists with, you know, copywriters or, you know?
What's interesting is we used to just get approached by the advertising industry, and now what's interesting is we're getting approached by all types of brands and all types of industries. We do an enormous amount of work with companies like Facebook on their new augmented reality platform. I think because we've been seen as a very visual company, they approached us, and we've been working a lot with these lenses. I don't think they call them filters, I think they call them lenses, where we're taking all of our skills of visual effects and translating it into real time. So doing all that work that we've been doing for the last 20 years in CGI, but actually applying it to a real-time environment. Now, what's interesting about that is suddenly the skill set of what we need changes. So yes, so we have to hire more coders, programmers, writers, so yeah, I think just to reflect on something that Maury was also referring to, I think the social media revolution has kind of turned everything on its head. I think 4 years ago it was social media was a complete afterthought. It was like, well, see if you can kind of make a cut down of this 30-second, and it was never really considered. And we've seen now whole campaigns that have been based around how can you be relevant and up to the second with regards to your brand and your message. So we did a Monster.com piece, which was a 30-second, big, expensive visual effects extravaganza, which we showed it to the world. We were very proud of it. But then the Monster.com themselves were like, well, we want 40 pieces of content, but we want to be able to make them really quickly, and we want to be really responsive. So if something's socially relevant, something's just happened, we want to be able to comment, but we want to use that CGI monster that you guys made. So we had to use game engine technology, literally the Unreal Engine that is made by Epic, that's used predominantly for video games. We had to use that in order to render our monster in CGI in real time, so we could generate these tiny 6-second, 10-second pieces of content. But what's great is it pushed us to come up with a solution, and in turn now you've got great content that really connects with the audience, that is socially relevant, and it's not just one bit of content that's just being forced at people. It's content that is kind of evolving and changing. So I think it's really exciting what's happening.
Awesome.
Social.
We only have a few minutes left, and I just, you know, really quickly, I wanted to ask each of you, like, where do you, you know, what do you think's, what's next as far as, or where are people going to be telling stories next? You know,
Well, storytelling's not about to go out of fashion. I mean, we are looking at continuing our thinking about where can animation be entertainment and where can it be of value. So I think increasingly we're looking to work in the healthcare industry, telling stories to connect with audiences with difficult messages and making experiences. And, you know, doctors, we're hearing a lot from not only pharmaceuticals, but also doctors and nurses and education, healthcare providers, that providing a consistent message to somebody and getting them to listen to it and to hear it is a really tough thing to do in the room. If you can create a little film or a little app or something that does it in a gentle way, that really makes people engage because they feel an emotional pull, it has the power to change behaviour. So I think that's one of the things we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, something that it's like something that people can actually.
Yeah, so they feel it with their hearts, and then it forces them to think.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I don't think that there's going to be another dominant, another dominant format for storytelling in the future. Like, yes, the 30-second commercial was king for, half a century or whatever. But I don't think we're going to see that anymore. But, in terms of our business, in terms of editing, things will still need to be edited. And you know what, and that might not translate into absolutely everything. VR for sure, AR we'll see. These things, a lot of it remains to be seen. But I think as long as we stick to our core craft and be true to what we do and how we do it, I think that everyone's going to still need editors. So I'm like looking forward and happy to adapt to all these different new mediums.
I'm pretty excited about augmented reality. I think that is something where we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. I think right now everyone's got a really powerful computer in their pocket that's disguised as a smartphone. It's a matter of time before that kind of doubles, triples, quadruples in power. And it's not going to be long before you can have spectacles that can then augment directly into the world that you're in. So I'm really excited about that. We're toying with things right now, playing with ideas, but it's in its infancy. But when you get magic that works, that's in the shared experience in augmented reality, it's special. It's really special. And I think that's the thing that up until now, VR misses. Is it's kind of very singular. It's a very isolating experience. Yeah. And I think VR will get there, but it's going to be a slow burn. So I'm really excited about augmented. I think that's a bit of a really, it's going to catch on fire. I think we're starting to see kind of fires here and there, but I think it's going to be very big.
Yeah, I think so too. I think AR is going to have the most practical applications that we'll see, daily. Yeah. Which will be, it's fascinating.
Amazing. I don't know how much time they're going to give us, but I'd love to open it up to any questions. If anyone has anything they want to ask anybody, please don't hesitate to raise your hand. No, she's saying hi to somebody. She's like, let's get coffee after this, all right?
That means I want to ask a question.
What's that? Well, cool. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.